Hi, Mike Matchett with Small World Big Data. I'm here today to talk about compliance and ensuring that your workloads are secure and compliant no matter where they are. And when I say no matter where they are, that means running the same kinds of control on them and governance that you might do, whether they're in the data center or in the cloud or in different areas of your increasingly hybrid organization. We've got Runecast here today to talk about this, so just hold on. Hey, welcome, Markus. Welcome to our show.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Uh, so this is an interesting area. It's increasingly popular and sometimes even mandatory for people to get a better grip on their workloads and really look at what's going on with them. But I don't know that I used all the right words when I introduced Runecast here. How would you describe what Runecast does for people?
It's very, very, very good. Yeah, actually, you did use the right words, right? And really, one of our key points is secure workloads anywhere, right? And that includes the compliance aspect, right? So if you were to look at some of the material from us, but really the bottom line is to make sure that no matter where within that ever increasing complexity you are with your workloads, that you have the same controls and the same measures, and you have a trusted partner that's with you in that journey and allows you to continuously be compliant and continuously be able to monitor your attack surface and your vulnerabilities and things of that nature.
All right, this is going to get a little bit more technical in a second, but first I just want to find out what drew you into this part of IT. How did you get involved in looking at the umbrella of workloads and trying to bring them all into the
Mm.
line?
I might be dating myself a little bit, but my initial stab into the world of, back then it was just called InfoSec, um, was during the very late 90s, early 2000s, working for America Online of all places at the time. And, that built the foundation for me being interested in all things cybersecurity and all things protection, right? And that's started from endpoints and went into regulatory compliance. I've spent some time around financial risk management and things like that, and yeah, finally ended up in the compliance and workload protection space, right?
So is this a security solution or a compliance solution for governance or an operations management solution? Where does Runecast fit in those areas?
I would answer yes. And
Okay, okay.
and that's simply because I don't think everyday life is built in these silos. While organizationally we like to think of these as silos and as different places and different teams, in reality though, on an everyday basis, that's very often the same team. Right. It's very often the same team that's running the infrastructure, whether that's VMware or AWS, Google Cloud, or containerized workloads, that will have to do the keeping it up and running and keeping the lights on, as well as making sure that any vulnerability is detected early on and there's some form of remediation in place, all the way through ensuring that any sort of regulatory compliance is adhered to and provide reporting and things like that back to senior management. So we fit in all of these categories just simply because that's generally the same team, and it's generally the same people who need to take care of all of these aspects of any given infrastructure, right?
All right. Let me explore that a little bit more. Just it still seems a little fuzzy yet to me. Let's take VMware for an example. What can you give me some practical examples of what you're going to do in a VMware environment for an organization?
Absolutely, yeah. It starts from just basically deploying Runecast into a VMware infrastructure and looking for potential problems from a troubleshooting perspective. So that's operational resiliency, if you will, right? So the understanding of, where are potential problem spots right? And be proactive about it rather than waiting before the problem becomes a problem, right? And potentially leads to outages or could spell more disaster, in the future in terms of potentially granting access to things that, nobody should have access to. All the way to running VMware security checks in your environment to make sure that, everything is configured securely, all the way to best practices and best practice guidelines. And that extends into vulnerability assessment of the VMs that are actually running, plus any sort of regulatory compliance checks. Let's assume you need to be NIST compliant or you need to be PCI DSS compliant, things like that. That obviously extends to your VMware estate as well. And all of this is in one place, right? So going back to what I said earlier on, it's generally the same team. It's the same set of people who need to deal with all of these different problem sets. And within Runecast, it's one platform, it's one place, right? It's one place you can look, it's one place where you find all of the answers, and it's one place where you get a good idea of, how well you are tracking within your infrastructure, both from a problem perspective, so again, operational resiliency, but also from a risk perspective. So it's all in one. It's all in one place, right?
So we say all, are we talking about, a couple hundred rules here, or what, and how does someone manage that?
It's a few more than a couple of hundred. We're currently standing somewhere around 35,000
Oh, okay.
automated checks that organizations can use Runecast to perform, right? And the automated bit, I think, is the really important part, right? It's very easy to say, oh yeah, here are 10,000 things that you should check, and dear infrastructure team, good luck. Of course, that's not the aim, right? The aim for Runecast has always been to automate this to the largest degree possible, so that the respective organization can basically rely on an automated process to check all of these things and provide the data and results back, so that you can really focus your time on remediating the problems rather than searching for the problems, right? Because searching for problems is not a very productive use of your time, right? You really want to spend that valuable time on remediating and preventing things from happening in the future, right?
All right. So I've seen a couple pictures of the interface. It looks like you put a lot of work into making, management of this simple and easy to consume on there. But what's behind that? Are you doing some clever things, I assume, to help people prioritize, for example, and get right to where they need to be getting?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, of course, there's some secret sauce, right, in that sense. But I think first and foremost, what Runecast has always stood for was it's built by admins for admins, right? And yes, that sounds like a very nice little tagline, but it's the truth in terms of we always try to understand what the everyday workload of the admin is going to look like and try to provide ways to prioritize work, right? So as an example, on the vulnerability side, for example, we don't just surface the fact that there is a vulnerability. That's, pretty straightforward, but we provide additional metadata for the teams then to prioritize. For example, the CVSS score, of course. But then we also include the CSER known exploited vulnerabilities catalog to allow you to see whether that particular CVE has already been successfully used in the wild for a data breach. We're also providing additional info around whether there is an exploit kit available for that particular CVE. Again, giving you additional metadata to understand which one of these CVEs need to be addressed now, and which one of these CVEs might have time until tomorrow or next week or whatever the time frame may be, depending on the risk appetite of the organization. And how we do this is some patented technology, of course, in the back end, but generally speaking, we call RICA. It's Runecast AI Knowledge Automation. And it's a way to automatically ingest what we call human readable knowledge. So texts of any sort, whether that's a security standard, compliance standard, or CVE data, take that, translate that through large language model and natural language processing into machine readable rules. So the things that Runecast as product can go out in your environment and actually check against. So taking that rather vague way of looking at the data, like something that's written, and translating that into machine readable rules that then Runecast can use to check against. And that's our backend. And, we've got a patent on the rules engine and things like that. But that's basically what enables us and our customers to basically make use of that and be able to automatically check all of these things, right?
All right. So is this something someone would do once or once a year, once a quarter to scan their environment, or are you doing something more dynamic here? And how are you doing that? Is it lightweight or heavyweight?
It's lightweight in the sense that the deployment and the initial setting up is, we're talking 20 minutes, half an hour maybe, right? The frequency depends a little bit on the organization's risk appetite, right? So of course, recommendation is you should scan depending on the category of your asset, right? So if it's category A assets, so high important assets, you should definitely scan at least daily, if not
Okay.
hourly, right? But customers generally set it up whatever way their internal auditing works. But the main goal, particularly from a compliance perspective, and that includes the vulnerability side of things as well, is continuous compliance, right? Because you don't want to be compliant just the 6 weeks around the time when the auditor shows up. You want to be compliant every day of the year. And that's historically always been very challenging because generally it requires quite a lot of manual tasks and manual finding of information. And with Runecast, you can automate that entirely, and it allows you to be compliant every day of the week, right?
So you're giving some reporting and scoring for someone to actually manage where they're at on a continuous basis, instead of
Correct.
just throwing darts at it once a year and saying, I think we're here, right?
Correct. And we provide customers with the ability to have very granular historical views as well. So at any given time, organizations can compare their performance today in terms of vulnerability assessment or compliance assessment with their performance 6 months ago or a year ago, right? And this also really helps internally to build trust. With the executive leadership team, for example, to really showcase that the teams are working towards one shared goal, and that's of course either the adherence to any sort of regulatory framework or the eradication of any sort of workload around vulnerabilities and things like that. But it gives you that ability to granularly go back in history and really compare that performance over time, right? How did you address these problems, and how can you prove back to the board? And I'm kind of
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
at scissors here, right? How can you prove back to the board that you've implemented all of these steps and that you're actually starting to see improvement?
Right, right. I mean, I think a lot of people sort of stumble at that point and be like, well, we've got this estimate, but here's now maybe a dashboard you can use every day and say, like, here's how we're improving.
Yep.
And like you said, help prioritize, what we should be doing every day, to improve that score or improve that gain.
Yep.
We talked about VMware. I know Runecast started in that sort of world of that, but you've expanded outwards in the last dozen years or half dozen years. What's sort of the landscape that you cover today?
Yeah, and of course, it's pretty well known that we started within the VMware space, and that's still largely where most of our customers, at least partially, are. But as you said, we've expanded out, and we always try to be where our customers are, right? So currently, when we look at what sort of the tech stack that Runecast supports, it's of course VMware, it's AWS. It's Google Cloud, it's Azure. We do Windows and Linux operating systems for the server workloads. We do any sort of Kubernetes flavor, basically,
Oh, okay.
whether that's Tanzu or EKS, and all of the hyperscaler Kubernetes workloads. So we really try to provide customers with the ability to, let's say, take one approach to vulnerability assessment or take one approach to regulatory compliance and apply that through one process, one tool, one set of reporting across all of the different workloads that are required, that a modern organization today has, right? Because the times are gone that we're all just sitting around the proverbial data center in the basement. Workloads tend to be in various different shapes and forms, some more ephemeral than others, but there's still the core requirement of having to provide vulnerability assessment, and having to provide a way to ensure regulatory compliance stayed the same, and it will stay the same, right? So Runecast provides that, ability to do that across that entire tech stack through one platform, right?
So let's talk about the platform just real quick. I mean, we're kind of running down here. Is this something people install on premise or they get as a SaaS service? And I mean, are you running agents or not? I mean, how's this thing really go out and impact and
Yeah.
assess its rules?
And again, the perfect answer is again yes, because there's multiple different deployment options, right? One being a very straightforward virtual appliance, right? That download gets deployed in VMware on premises, no problem, very quickly done. I've mentioned 15, 20 minutes or so, can run completely air gap, doesn't require any internet connectivity, and that's one way. The other way is a containerized deployment through Helm. Again, can be deployed on premises, no problem. We have AWS and Azure images, so AMI, to deploy it in the cloud. We also have a SaaS offering.
Oh,
So
okay.
if
Okay.
customers do prefer to go down the route of a SaaS offering, we have an AWS SaaS offering that allows you to choose the region that you would like to deploy in, data sovereignty reasons, and their like. And again, it allows you to deploy where you need it, right? In terms of agents, we have both, right? So if you look at, let's say, all of the orchestration layer, for example, so that's VMware directly or AWS, GCP, things like that. We've always been agentless. All of this has always been done via API endpoints and SDK and integrations and things like that. The operating system itself, so the server operating system, the Linux box or the Windows box, we've traditionally required an agent to be installed. Pretty common, unfortunately, in the industry. It's just very difficult to get that information. We've now recently started to release early access for an agentless version of that, particularly also on premises. There's been quite a lot of push in the industry to do that, mostly in the SaaS space. To my knowledge, there's very little success so far with vendors trying to do that on premises because of the technical difficulties. And I'm really proud of the team to be able to say, yeah, we've replicated that on premises, and we're literally just now releasing the first early access version of doing vulnerability assessment and compliance assessment without the need of an agent within an
Yeah.
on-premises deployment.
So further reducing the footprint, and probably increasing the security,
Yep,
but and not having to violate the privileges in there.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So I mean, there's probably a lot more things we could dive into. At some point, maybe we could do a demonstration for the folks about, like just what you're doing here, because I think the workflows looks interesting. But
Yep.
for this, if someone wants to learn a little bit more about Runecast and says, you know what, we could probably use that to get a handle on our environment and help prioritize what we should be doing in terms of security and compliance and governance and all those other things. Where should they start? What would be your first recommendation for that?
Best way to do that is, first of all, of course, go to runecast.com. So that's
Okay.
runecast.com, runecast.com. And then really the next two things that I would encourage everyone to do who's interested in looking at this is, one, check out the online demo. It's available for the public, so everyone can log into the online demo and can really look at it and get an initial feel for what Runecast provides and the data it shows. And the other is to sign up for a free trial, right? We provide free trial licenses, that's no problem. That then takes that to the next level, and you can deploy it in your own environment and really kind of kick the tires and get an idea of what it can do for you as an organization. The online demo is a great initial look at it, but of
Mm,
course that's staged in some shape or form, whereas the free trial is obviously in your environment. And I would absolutely highly encourage anyone who thinks this could be helpful, go out, get a free
right.
trial,
Right. I mean,
sign up.
get an assessment, see how many thousands of things
Yeah,
it can cover and what priorities it puts on things and what
absolutely.
scores it gives you. I mean, that's a great way to just even get
Yep.
a self audit on it. So that's a great offer, Marcus. Uh, I think there's a lot going on in this space, right? Compliance regs and everything. You guys are
Yep.
staying on top of it and updating this regularly. It looks really great. I think it's going to be a good couple years for Runecast, and hope people take a look. So thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you.
All right, guys, check it out. Get your own security and compliance check done for free. Go ahead. I dare you. Let me know how it goes. Take care, guys. Bye.